Welcome back to the Everton Byline. This is episode number 63. We are very much in the middle of an international break, but the Blues are very much in sight again ahead of the weekend as we go to Manchester City, but plenty to talk about before then. Joining me, as ever, is Paddy Boylan. Paddy, how are you?
Yeah, very well. Weekend away from Everton, but for me, it was quite first of all, a nice break from work, but second of all, good that Everton went into the international break in good form after a decent win. So always nice to have 2 weeks, I guess, to reflect on positive Everton things.
Yeah, it's happened twice this year, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's been wonderful to stew on. It's almost like if they never played again, it'd be like the last in memory for us.
Yeah, keep it there. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. But yeah, we will be talking about obviously plenty of Everton stuff throughout the course of the show. That's great questions in from people as well, as we tend to do on these international break shows. Just a reminder, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can hit like, you can hit subscribe. If you subscribe to the channel, you get notified whenever these shows go up or whenever they go live. We do them as a premiere. It's also great to get people's thoughts on the questions that we answer and the topics that we discussed today as well. So do leave your comments. Always great to read through them. If you want to get in touch with us for some longer form content or any longer questions that can't go in comments or can't go on social media, it's evertonbyline@gmail.com. And if you listen to us on Apple or on Spotify, you can leave us a rating or leave us a review. And you can watch the video on Spotify as well now, which is a cool little addition. So if you listen to us on Spotify and you want to see the channel, as I know a lot of people do, you can do that as well now. Just a couple of other things as well this week, Paddy. Just want to say thanks to Harry, who's been doing some social stuff for us over the past few months, where commitments and the other bits and pieces means he's not going to be doing them anymore. We'll say a big thanks to him. So anyone's seen those little videos we do on Twitter, that's all Harry's great work. So he's been great for us over the past few months. So it means if anyone else get in some situations, keen to get a bit of experience, wants to do a bit of work on the show, help us with social. I think we are very much novices still, aren't we, Paddy, me and you? If you're down with the kids and want to help us grow on various platforms, do get in touch with us at evertonbyline@gmail.com. It'll be wonderful to hear from people who are keen to get into the industry and maybe are a bit more social media savvy than us. And just a reminder as well, we are sponsored by the Bridewell. I don't know if you've seen this yet, Paddy, but a very exciting guest.
David Weir
is doing an afternoon there, in a few weeks. It's David Weir, who I think probably like low key one of my favorite players. Sort of growing up in that era, like just very much did the job, really composed. Maybe didn't get the credit he deserved. It should be a really fascinating guest. Obviously, I haven't worked in football at a high level for a while, and obviously been at Brighton. So the details on that, I'll put the link in the description. But the details for that, it's on the Friday, 28th of November. It's 1 till 5. It's £25, and you get some food as well. And obviously, the afternoon with David Weir. And I couldn't recommend those events enough. Obviously, been to the one with Derek Manfield and Pat Nevin this year, and you get plenty of food. The lads who do the talks are genuinely really good with the time and happy to speak to people afterwards. And should be a really interesting guest, that one, Paddy. I don't think he's spoken loads, has he, David? He's done the odd interview here and there, but certainly not much like that. So it should be a few good insights from him, I'd imagine.
Yeah, well, I mean, last few years, obviously, he's been technical director at Brighton, and what that means typically is you don't hear an awful lot from people in those positions. I think Kevin Thelwell at Everton would do maybe an interview or a piece to camera with the club channel at the end of every window, explaining how things had gone. I think at times that was an exercise in damage limitation, given what they weren't able to do in the market at times. So it's not in England. It's different. You don't really hear a lot from these people. Germany and other places you do. So I think that's a fascinating side of this. He's not long left Brighton, obviously, but before then had a very strong playing career as well, and played for Everton. Probably my first season ticket year, he'd have been at the heart of the defence, and was very elegant. I thought very elegant, rarely ruffled by anything that was going on. A good footballer, and probably one that would not have been out of place in the modern game, you'd suggest, given the kind of the movement towards a more ball playing style. So yeah, I'm sure that'll be great.
Yeah, it should be a great afternoon. So I'll put the details in the video or on Apple or Spotify if you're listening to us. Alternatively, if you want to email us about details, I'm sure I can pass them on to the relevant people, or you can just get in touch with the Bridewell via Twitter. So yeah, plenty of ways to get in touch and get involved, and that should be a great afternoon. But yeah, anyway, let's bulletin's done there anyway at the start this week. Let's go into some Everton questions and topics. We're going to do two before we tackle a few of the many great questions we've had. We'll rattle through them to finish. But all about contracts, Paddy, isn't it? This international break, it would appear. Obviously, last week, I think probably we got the one big surprise, really, I'd say, that kind of came through with James Tarkowski. And I think we've all kind of been waiting on Jordan Pickford to have official confirmation on his. By the time this goes out, maybe that might be done. I don't know. And then obviously we've got James Garner and Vitaly Mikalenko that's been kind of simmering in the background as well. But let's talk about Tarkowski's one first, because I think it did catch me by surprise, that one, a little bit. Like, I know obviously he's in his last year and there would have been talks around it, but I think that the timing of it sort of seemingly coming out of nowhere, and the length of the contract as well, maybe, were eyebrow raising to say the least. What are your thoughts on that one? Because I think he's become quite divisive, Tarkowski, hasn't he? I think people either really, really like him or really just can't be having him at all. I think I'm more towards the former. I see the value in him as a player and as a leader, and I think when he's next to Bradford, he's a really good defender, and maybe a different proposition to what he is at the moment, I'd say. But 2.5 years does seem quite a long time for a player who's just come off an injury and is maybe getting towards those twilight years of his career.
Yeah, but equally, I don't know if Tarkowski necessarily would have wanted to stay at Everton and pick that option had it been a much shorter contract. These players, as much as they may like playing for clubs, they are often obviously looking after their best interests, and I'm pretty sure he'll have wanted at least 2 years, if not more. And then it was on Everton really as to whether they wanted to do it at that or to look elsewhere. And I don't think it's a massive surprise really that they have chosen to extend him for this length of time. I mean, every time you hear Moyes speak, he's talking about how important the defensive unit is. I think he thinks that's the most important part of the team, that axis of Pickford, Tarkowski and Branthwaite. He is obviously now 32 years of age, Tarkowski, and I don't think he's had a particularly great start to the season. He would no doubt acknowledge that himself if asked, because he's pretty honest. That may be a number of things, but I think what's harmed him so far this season has been the lack of pre-season with the injuries, and then having to more or less come in straight away and perform. I don't think you can underestimate how important it is, or overstate how important it is, I should say, to get a good pre-season under your belt. So he's not been where he was. I don't think Jared Branthwaite's injury problems help him, because I feel like they're pretty much a complementary pair. What Tarkowski lacks, Jared Branthwaite has, and vice versa. So Jared Branthwaite's extra speed across the ground, I think, makes up for Tarkowski's lack of speed. I think Tarkowski can sometimes be a bit more aggressive and aerially dominant, even though he's smaller than Branthwaite. I think he leads the team in those ways. He's obviously a presence in the dressing room, part of the senior leadership team with Pickford and Coleman. So I think there's loads of reasons with the squad in the state of transition to re-sign Tarkowski. That to me seems to be pretty fair and a reasonable thing to do in those circumstances. But it will be interesting to see how things change in central defence over the next 2-3 seasons, because you are conscious of a player here who's 32 years of age. Just on Branthwaite, by the way, I still think he also brings out a better version of Vitaly Mikalenko. And we've said this before on the show, but like, Everton seem to have been caught an awful lot in that channel between Mikalenko and Keane so far this season, particularly by your more direct runners like Ekitike, Sarr, players of that ilk. And I just can't see that happening as much with Jared Branthwaite there as a recovery defender. So while we can obviously point to individual performances, Tarkowski, Branthwaite, various others, Michael Keane even, the difference one player makes Branthwaite is potentially huge to that defence. The problem, of course, is that Branthwaite as well has been injured for just about all of pre-season, so he'll take some time too. It's far from ideal, but that's where we are. I don't know. I mean, to me, it looks like solid business from Everton.
Yeah, I imagine you're talking about Moyes there. I imagine there'll be the one thing you might be a bit conscious of is that obviously they lost a lot of experience in the summer just gone with obviously Ashley Young, Decore, Coleman's got a year left. You know, feel like he's playing a big part role. Like his impact is going to be as much about behind the scenes as what's happening on the pitch. And I wonder, like, that's sort of at the back of Moyes' mind. Like, if they lose Seamus from the playing squad as well next season, if he doesn't sign another deal, like, you know, it does feel like you said, it feels like there's a lot of new players there. There's a lot of young players there as well. There's no guarantee if Grealish comes back again. He's obviously one of your more experienced players. So perhaps that's somebody's conscious of as well. But just something I was thinking of them when you were talking, and it relates to Moyes and these deals. So obviously, in the case of Pickford and then potentially Garner and Mikalenko as well, and here with Tarkowski, all these players that are signing longest term deals now are all going to be, you know, extended beyond what Moyes himself is sort of doing. So with that in mind, based on your knowledge of the situation, how this new setup works in regards to recruitment and retaining players, how will that decision sort of be made? Will it be Moyes driving this? And then if he is driving it, will there not be people sort of at that level below Angus Kinnear or involving Angus Kinnear who are saying, well, you know, we're signing a player here potentially for, you know, after your contract is even up? Like, I suppose that might be some of the maybe a little bit tricky to navigate as we move forward, I imagine.
Yeah, and I think this is the difficulty sometimes in just pinpointing one individual in a process. It's the same with transfers. Like, so many people get involved in these processes now, but particularly at Everton, that it probably is a bit unfair to only talk about one individual. With the Tarkowski one, I think this is a really good case study. With the Tarkowski one, my sense is that this was a decision by the footballing department at the club. This was one that was driven by somebody like David Moyes, who knows the importance of Tarkowski in the dressing room and wants to retain that. Everybody will get involved in it, and that's all the way through from Moyes to, I'd say, Angus Kinnear, but then also above that, I think the ownership will have oversight over what's taken place and obviously choose to sign off on things as and when they want. I think Chris Howarth, who was brought in obviously by Angus Kinnear at the end of last season as a sort of head of strategy and another data and analytics guy. I think he will play quite an important role in assessing the market and looking at the data behind how players age and all these kind of things. But I think there's probably quite an easy case to make for an ownership to say no to this kind of extension. When you say, well, he's going to be 34 at the end of that season, and we don't know how he's going to do with injuries now that he picked up one at the end of last season and so on. And has this start to the season maybe put a bit of doubt in people's minds as to his longevity almost? And that's what I mean by this being a footballing decision. I think that's almost kind of being battered away. Everton have got this over the line, and I think they've done so because of the desire within the footballing part of the operation to retain Tarkowski, not just for his ability on field, but also that leadership element, that thing in the dressing room. Moyes spoke about it an awful lot, as did Kinnear publicly over the summer when it came to the squad exodus and then the influx, the importance of having. I think they highlighted Coleman, Keane, Idrissa Gueye, just for a bit of continuity in the dressing room at a time otherwise of upheaval. So I think everyone gets involved. The point you raised about Moyes is an interesting one in the sense that obviously he's only contracted. He signed a 2.5-year deal, so he is not contracted as long as some of these players signing extensions right now. I don't think that will bother him overly. I think he's looking at this as, how can I set? He almost sees himself as a bit of a custodian. He knows he's not going to be here as long as he was in his first instance. How can I set Everton up for as long as possible into the future? So yeah, I think his argument still holds an awful lot of sway at the club when it comes to these extensions and these signings.
Yeah, like I'm fine with it. Like, and I think it's one of those as well where if you're gonna, I imagine the long term gain, it's like aim here will be to sort of usher Jake O'Brien into that position. But for the time being, he's playing at right back, isn't he? So he's can't go that area. I mean, surely next summer will be the one we actually sign a right back and don't have to worry about this ever again. But
Maybe,
you never
maybe. I mean,
know.
one of the other things I'd mentioned in coverage on The Athletic recently was that my understanding of a lot of what happened over the summer with contract extensions and negotiations for the older members of the squad was that the club was moving much more from a base salary up here. And to those listening and not watching this is probably me doing gestures, probably isn't very helpful. Higher base salaries, moving towards something where there's maybe a lower base salary for players, but it's more in performance and clause based. And maybe that eventually allows these players to get back to what they were earning before. I'm not talking about Tarkowski here. I'm talking about the summer business. I don't know for sure on Tarkowski, to be honest, but I would imagine that that's something that they've looked at again and that they've discussed. That idea of, well, you're getting older, so we're going to pay you less guaranteed salary, but more of it's performance based. So if you make X amount of starts or you have X amount of clean sheets, for example, we will still pay you what you were on before. I think that's the way the club has moved in general since Kinnear and certainly Nick Hammond, who was kind of brought in as head of trading since they came in. That's been the direction of travel.
Yeah, and on the other stuff as well, obviously we mentioned Pickford. That feels like it's very much done,
Close.
really. Like I said,
Very close.
4-year deal essentially for him. And then we've got James Garner and Vitaly Mikalenko. Like I said, they're sort of simmering in the background as well. But
Yeah.
where are we at with them? You said Pickford's very close.
Yeah. So I think Pickford's very close. I don't think that was ever going to be a difficult deal for Everton to do. When I kind of think back to when I and various others reported this, it's probably at the start of September, to be honest. And all the indications then were that A, Everton wanted him on a long-term deal. B, they felt that it could potentially see him through to the end of his career, all being well. And C, they didn't expect there to be many hiccups here because the player had already shown a willingness to re-sign with Everton. So those talks have been positive and they've progressed a lot. So I don't think we're too far away on Jordan Pickford. Equally, I still think there's a bit of work to do, quite a bit of work to do on somebody like James Garner. I don't think that's anywhere near as close as Pickford right now. That's not to say it can't get done and it won't get done. Obviously, the club are definitely interested in extending him. But I think with Garner, what has maybe eased Everton's anxieties over him is just the sense that they do have a club option there as part of his deal, as I've reported before. So what that means is that effectively, if they trigger that, he's not actually in the final year of his deal. He's got 2 left to go. I still think they'll look at Gardner. I still think they'll almost certainly do it at some point. Mikalenko, you would imagine the same logically, but neither of those two are as advanced as I understand it as Pickford is right now.
Yeah, I mean it's great for Pickford, isn't it? In the sense, I think as well, maybe there wasn't quite the talk about him leaving, or there wasn't talk about him leaving like compared to someone like Branthwaite was there. But
No.
if we're talking about your best players and your best performers getting what they deserve, like this is the prime example of it, isn't it? Like I know there's been a lot of talk about, there always is around England breaks, isn't there, about maybe the last few years, like, oh, is James Trafford going to replace him? Is goalkeeper X going to replace him? And I think maybe barring one article I've seen, it feels like there's been a general acceptance and maybe finally a wider coming around to quite how good he is for England. And but I read a lot more, I think, in the last few weeks. I know about you, about his performances for Everton as well. So it does sort of feel like the wider football media is kind of cotton on a little bit. Sorry, Paddy, you're on mute there, mate.
Very slowly, I would argue. Feels like there's been a lag of 2, maybe 3 seasons here before people have caught up to, I suppose, the Everton an Evertonian version of Jordan Pickford and opinion of him. I wonder if it's to do with some of the recent records he's obviously broken with England, and just seeing him listed in that pantheon of greats alongside those names. Obviously he kept, I think it was his consecutive 8th clean sheet in England's last game, which is a record. He's most capped. He's up there with the most capped players now, isn't he? Most capped goalkeepers as well. So he's done the business for Everton over the years, but certainly in recent years, he's done the business for England too. I do think maybe people are slowly cottoning on to that from outside our Merseyside bubble, and that's nice to see. He deserves that recognition. He's done an excellent job over the years, and I still don't think, heading into the Euros next time, I still don't think there's anyone there that can really get near to him. Not in my opinion, anyway.
No, definitely not. We will leave it there with the contracts for now. Second part, Paddy, I wanted to talk a little bit about Hill Dickinson Stadium yesterday, or sorry, Sunday. I was there along with 18,000 other people, brilliantly, to watch Everton Women less brilliantly play Manchester United and lose 4-1 ultimately. But one of those where I think obviously the value of that new stadium kind of comes to its own again. And like I know there's a lot of people who've been talking about ridiculously about why are they playing there when they've got Goodison and all that kind of thing. But obviously there are Premier League rules or WSL rules which may mean that they have to. But it was just such a cool day. Taking my daughter, who admittedly had a bit of a tantrum when trying to put a coat on in the freezing cold, but it was just class to see so many families there, the train being packed with sort of young girls who were, I saw a lot of people with the names of the women's players on the backs of the shirt. I think for Everton and, the people who were involved in the women's team, maybe we'll talk about what's going on the pitch a bit later, but off the pitch, certainly in regards to the way in which the Goodison was launched with that Tottenham match, and what people were able to go and witness and experience at Hill Dickinson Stadium on Sunday. Great credit to everyone involved in that, because there's a lot more eyeballs on that team now, and with that will come pressures, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But off the pitch, it feels like they're getting so much right there now, and there is a great sort of foundation for them to kick on.
Yeah, I think the other thing that stood out to me from Sunday's game was just the extent to which the club worked to make it an occasion beyond merely the 90 minutes on the pitch. Because if you just saw that from an Everton perspective, you'd have been sorely disappointed, of course. But I noticed that they had DJ on, and they had events before the game, and they had people there to kind of entertain families who'd gone and stuff like that. And obviously the women's game does have more, I'd say, of a family feel to it than the men's side. So it felt like they'd really clearly distinguished between what they needed to do at various events, and did a good job of kind of activating all of that. On the pitch, I mean, great to see the attendance, really healthy attendance again, 18,000. And that'll be massive for the team, the players on the pitch, the coaching staff, everybody that works hard behind the scenes. That'll be massive for them. Not so long ago, Matt, by the way, that they were playing at Walton Hall Park in front of probably a crowd of around 1,000 in really outdated facilities that, if we're being honest, were probably only being used otherwise for schoolboys and schoolgirls football. So to see the transition to Goodison, then obviously using Hill Dickinson is a massive thing. With that, though, I think there does come a sense of expectation. If people are going to continue forking out the money, then they're going to want to see a more positive version of Everton. Now, I think the last thing we did on the women's team was after the opening day win at Anfield, where they admittedly played very well. But they are now quite close to the bottom of the table, results since have not been good. And I think from everybody in this, from fans, from ownership, given the amount that's being invested in the women's team, I think everybody will want to see an improvement in fortunes. Where I think we have to add a bit of context, I think it's most research shows that the more changes you make over the course of a summer, first of all, the longer, obviously, logically, it takes to adapt. But B, it does sort of hurt results in that following on season. So that might be an issue here. But I also think that we're seeing like injuries crop up again. We're seeing some other kind of flaws and failings within in performances, kind of a muddled style at times. So I think they've got work to do. I think they've got work to do. And I think because of the money that's being spent now on the women's team, I think the expectation right at the top will be that they get this right, and they get this right sooner rather than later. So hopefully 18,000 capacity attendance, or 18,000 attendances aren't going to have to watch Everton 1, Manchester United Women 4 all too often at Hill Dickinson. Beyond that, everything else apart from the 90 minutes was thoroughly positive. But of course, we can't attach the 90 minutes. The 90 minutes is really, really important in all of this for the kind of the sustainability of it more than anything else.
Yeah, and I think the one thing you mentioned there about mitigating factors, like there is a lot of pressure on these girls and Sorensen and the team, isn't there? Because they are the ones who are going to be playing that first ever year at Goodison. They obviously played first women's team to play at Hill Dickinson Stadium on Sunday. Like that, as much as they will talk it up, and it comes with excitement. Like this is a young squad, new players. Like there is a lot of pressure on them there. So I think that's something as well that we've got to factor. But I think if you're being brutal about it, I think you're right. It's just that Anfield game, they haven't won a match, have they? Like
well, results need to be better. I think that's quite simple.
Like that's the only game that they've won all season. Like, and again, watching them on Sunday, they go 1-0 up in the first half, and it was great. Obviously, great noise when the goal goes in. Great seeing families all together celebrating it. But United should have been 3-0 up before Everton had scored, and they could have easily scored a couple after. And going in at 1-0 half time, you're thinking, right, we've rode our luck a little bit there, dig it in the second half, make yourselves hard to beat, and frustrate them. And it was just the complete opposite, wasn't it? But good to know that the Everton spirit lives on a little bit at Hill Dickinson Stadium, Paddy, in the sense that Jess Park, obviously former Everton player, came off the bench, I think, and scored twice for United. So that's still going on. But I think the pressure's going to ramp. Like now they've had the big grand opening at Goodison and all the razzmatazz around that. Now they've had the first game at Hill Dickinson Stadium, and a lot of people have come in to watch it. Like the season's going to settle down a bit now, and I think the focus is going to come away from Goodison and how great that is to what's actually going on the pitch here and how they're going to be getting on. So I think as much as a lot of things to be excited about, and they do require time and patience, that things are going to have to pick up definitely on the pitch. So one to watch there. We'll be doing a bit more on the women's team and their fortunes or misfortunes, you maybe say, tomorrow on Subs Weekly with Laura Gates and your colleague Paddy, Megan Fringa, is going to be joining us as well on the show to talk about all things Everton and Everton Women. So looking forward to that. We'll finish off this week as ever during the international break with some questions. We'll pick up this one first, Paddy, from email, and then we'll go into the ones we've had on Blue Sky and on Twitter. And this one's from Tom Bailey, who says, hi both, question for today's show. What is the best solo goal you've seen us score live, judging purely on the quality of the goal and ignoring the context/importance of the goal? And he puts two forward that are Barkley away at Newcastle. We won 3-0 in 2014. So it was when he ran from his own half, wasn't it? Skipped across the box. And good celebration as well, that one. I think you've got to factor that into the whole thing. And then the other one was Sigurdsson away at Leicester in 2018. I was at that game, very, very hungover. But it was a great palate cleanser to see us go there and win. Really great goal, that one. But anything jump out to you, Paddy? Is the best goal you've seen Everton score live?
Did you say best solo goal, or did you say goal?
Best goal.
Best goal, right.
Yeah.
I mean, James McFadden is the obvious one.
Against Charlton.
Against Charlton at Goodison. I mean, it says Tom says in his question to take the context out, but it's hard to remove context when he scores in the last minute and he does what he does, flicking the ball over a defender's head and then volleying it in from the edge of the box. I mean, that immediately springs to mind. I had a great view in the press box of Wayne Rooney's goal against West Ham in his second spell at Everton, where he lobs the keeper from 40, 50 yards, more or less the halfway line. And then, bizarrely, one of the first things that came to my head when you read out the question was Vitaly Mikalenko's goal away at Leicester City. I mean, again, context really important, but even if you remove the context from that, just to see him do that, I was astonished. I was like, how has this even happened? So, slightly different answer to I suppose a slightly different question there, but that's my slight curveball. That's the one that I'm not expecting many other people to say.
The Mikalenko one's a great shout. I was in the away end at Leicester that day, and you're right. Like there was so much else around that. Like it was just
Yeah,
probably the best away I've ever been in.
yeah,
But it was just right where you are at Leicester, you're right behind that, so you could just see as soon as he hit it that it was going in. I like at that. I think at that point it was obviously was he 3 months into his Everton career, around about that. So I think we all kind of thought he had that in his locker at that point. It became quite apparent that maybe it's not necessarily something in his game, but an amazing goal nonetheless. Yeah, like I'm trying to think of non-obvious ones. Like the one, which I'll always go to, which maybe a little bit different, is Baines' second free kick at West Ham, and I think it's more like going to Tom's question about seeing it live and seeing it in the flesh, like. Being behind the goal that day, I was just so convinced he was going to score. Like, even though he just scored one earlier, and I just remember thinking, like, I know exactly where he's going to put it as well. Like, I had just utmost faith in him and his ability. And like, the first one's good, but it goes keeper side, and Jaskalainen dives for it. The second one is just inch perfect. Hits the post. Jaskalainen doesn't move. It's just an absolute belter. I mean, the other obvious one as well, which I was there for, was Osman's goal against Larissa.
yes,
Rare foray into the park end that night for me. And again, we were right behind it as soon as he hit it. But I think I prefer team goals, to be honest. But we're not really
That's my
scored
favourite. That's my favourite Goodison goal.
the Osman one.
Purely in aesthetic terms. So removing the context, but I just think like it's basically perfect as a move. It like Baines on the overlap and Cahill flicks it in, Pinar's there, and even the finish from Osman, like the way he kind of checks his stride, and then the finish which kind of arcs in. I was behind that in the lower Gladys, and could almost behind the goal. I could almost see the ball arcing into the corner. It's a phenomenal goal and great technique from Osman. The other thing I saw, and again, this is answering probably a different question, so not very helpful. But the other thing I saw on Twitter today was highlights package of Watford 2, Everton 3. The game when I think it was Theo Walcott scored a last-minute goal after Moise Kean fluffed his lines.
That was a great pass, that, Paddy. It was a great assist.
It was a great run from Richarlison. Keane quite clearly fluffs his lines. And Walcott's there at the back post to score in front of the away fans. And I was remembering earlier, like that was one of the best away ends I've seen in quite a while. Not Leicester away from that Mikalenko goal and that season, but that just that being a last minute goal in a victory, that was something to witness from the press box as well.
That was amazing. That was when Mia scored twice in first half injury time, wasn't it? To draw
and
that.
then
And we were down to 10 men as well, weren't we? After Fabian Delph did one of his.
Delph did a stupid, didn't he, in the corner, despite being an experienced player. I think it was after that game. Watford had like their version of Arsenal fan TV, and they were doing something outside the game. And there's this lad kicking off at Mina dancing in front of the home fans when he scored both goals. I just thought it's not only have Everton won here, but they've really riled the Watford fans, and I think that's kind of job well and truly done.
And last thing on this, there was a video from the home end, wasn't there, of a Watford fan, and they were shouting something like "nobble him" to Richarlison as he was running forward. Nobble him, they were saying. Yeah, very weird. Must be a Watford sort of saying, but never forget that. Very, very weird. Other questions, we had a couple on Blue Skies, get through them. This one's from the street end. It says, "Hi, Matt and Paddy. Can you tell us about whether the club have returned the academy to full-time status after the Freakin purchase, and what they are doing to compete with City, United, and the others to compete for local talent?" So just on that, Paddy, quickly, why did the academy not why would it not be full time anyway for a Premier League football club?
So full time in the sense that we're talking about younger age groups here. Obviously, your academy scholars, 16, 17, 18, they are training full time. But below that, it's a question of funding. And Everton were an aberration in the sense that they didn't have the funds to do this, and didn't have they went to a part-time model when the going was really tough financially towards the end of Mashiri's time. I mean, I think the aim was always to get back to that full-time model, and the understanding was that that would happen. I know the academy director, Gareth Prosser, did an interview second half of last season outlining that intention publicly and saying that was in the pipeline. I don't know for sure whether that's happened, but that was certainly the aim at the time he did the interview, and it was subsequently expressed that it was still an aim when I checked up on it. What happened though, actually behind the scenes within the academy, is there's been quite a bit of upheaval there too. So not only did Everton lose, obviously, Sean Dyche in January, and then they lost Kevin Thelwell and various other backroom members of staff towards the end of last season. But in the academy, Prosser, who I've just mentioned there, the academy director, he took up a job in the UAE with Al Jazeera. You had James Vaughan leaving. He was head of academy recruitment, and he was also the loan pathways manager, I think was his official title. So actually what Everton have got right now is they've got no academy director. They've got an interim in place right now, Carl Darlington, the head of academy coaching. Nobody has assumed James Vaughan's role full-time yet, so that's going to have to be a priority, and I'm sure is a priority. But what that's meant is that I suppose some of the big decisions you would imagine have been made to wait for a while. So I think that will happen. I think it's a matter of time, but I couldn't sit here without asking the question again. Couldn't sit here for definite and say it has already taken place. I think it's one to watch for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, needs to do a bit more, don't we, with the academy? I think it's not been the best in recent years. We've had two questions here along a similar theme on Twitter, so we'll go through them together. So Liam D79 has asked, given the outstanding performances of Seamus and Jake O'Brien during the break, could we yet see Seamus reintegrated into the side at right back? We won't meet too many sides with the quality of Portugal in the Premier League. Yeah, it was a gutting defeat for Ireland, that wasn't it, during the break?
Yeah.
And good to see Coleman playing. Did you see his Everton shin pads as well? You had on, Paddy?
Yeah, tiny shin pads, by the way, but yeah,
Very
nice
small.
to see Everton shin pads.
I would have thought Coleman was a bit too old school for that. I would have thought he would have a big thick. You know, the ones that come like right round your foot at the bottom and everything, and the ankle support.
Yeah, I used to have those when I played, but I think that's like playing in local leagues in Liverpool. You kind of need the protection on your ankles at times.
Yeah, and we've had this one's all from Fox, who said James Garner's been touted as an option at right back, given his impressive displays at left back. Do you think Garner wants to play at right back, and how much discretion will Moyes give players wishes when selecting the team, particularly longer term and during a contract renegotiation? So I think ultimately those questions all kind of combine to look at the right back situation. And obviously Garner did well there, didn't he, for 20 minutes against Crystal Palace before the break. But like, it feels like any, probably Coleman's probably third choice at the moment, you'd say, with Garner maybe second, and O'Brien, you'd imagine, was still off the share. But no, listen, it's encouraging, isn't it, that Garner did well there. It's encouraging that Coleman played against a real high level of opposition during the break and acquitted himself well. We need a right back, obviously, but it's good that like kind of the support and cast to Jake O'Brien have kind of shown what they're about a bit over the last few weeks in that position.
Well, yeah, and I think James Garner's been worth his weight in gold to Everton so far this season, in the sense that he's played right back, left back, and in central midfield now. I think in all of those positions as well, he's done, I would argue, a more than adequate job. I mean, does he want to play right back? I mean, he probably sees he's been pretty clear on this so far. He sees his future as a central midfielder. I think he said over the summer he likes to play, in particular, as a number 6. Mentioned that while he was over in the United States, and had played in that role against Manchester United in the Premier League Summer Series. So I see that as more of a short-term option from Everton's perspective, like a a stopgap when they really need to. That's not to say that he couldn't become or be a very good right back. I think he's got all the qualities you need to do that, and obviously did a very good job as well for England when they won the under-21 Euros, not last time, but the season before that, the summer before that. I think your pecking order is right, though. I think your pecking order at the moment, it's Jake O'Brien, then James Garner, then Seamus Coleman, then Nathan Patterson, who is obviously very far down that list, and we don't even really speak about Patterson anymore, funnily enough. Coleman showed the other night he did a really good job against Rafael Leao, who's one of the world's best wingers, a good job against Cristiano Ronaldo, so he was excellent. It was great to see Jake O'Brien doing so well in central defence as well. Acutely aware that he is not actually a right back, and I think he as well would much prefer to play it at centre back too. So we are where we are right now, just because of the lack of recruitment in that right back position, and it feels like a short term fix, and they need that long term solution. I would hope in time James Garner can stay in midfield, they buy a new right back, and Jake O'Brien gets more of a run at centre back. That would be my hope, and that would be my expectation. In terms of James Garner doing it right now and enabling, let's say, O'Brien to compete with the others at centre back, I think my issue with that is, firstly, who plays in central midfield, because I think I still trust Garner there over Timmy Rabunam.
I was going to say, just before you go on, Paddy, we've had another question which I was going to get to. This is from Joe Belly, who said some very kind words about the podcast as well at the start of his question. So cheers for that, Joe. But he said, I'm interested to know what you think James Garner's best position is and what you think his long-term position at Everton will be, assuming he signs an extension. He's been our best player this season, especially given his versatility. He's done a phenomenal job filling in gaps in the lineup all year, which is why I'm curious to know where you think he fits in best. Keep up the great work. And up the toffees, Joe, the Canadian toffee. So I imagine he would still say centre mid's his best position, wouldn't he?
Well, I think David Moyes would as well.
Yeah.
So Moyes has been really positive about him this season and spoken about his versatility. But I think when Moyes has talked as well about Garner maybe pushing into England contention and taking more responsibility, but I think he means doing that in central midfield. So I still believe the plan for James Garner at Everton. Everton's idea is that he is a central midfielder, and they will find solutions elsewhere. To go back to my original point, though, I think there is a really good right back in there. I think there's a really good right back in there. You look at some of his deliveries from the flank. He's got a good right foot, mobile, can be aggressive in his play. So it's good to have that there if needs be too.
We'll do a couple more just to finish very, very quickly. So we've got this one from Tangled Up in Blues. Said, do we know how much is available to spend re-PSR in the January window on a striker or fullback, whatever the perceived priority is? Not quite sure. I suppose a lot of it depends on how the deals are structured in the summer and all that kind of stuff, doesn't it?
Well, and also how the deals are structured in January and what those payments are like and the way they're spread out. I mean, I would still expect that the bulk of Everton's trading comes next summer. They'll look at the market, no doubt about that. They'll look at the market and try to find various solutions, but I wouldn't expect like a huge splurge. Normally the clubs that splurge in January are the ones that either are wanting a push towards Champions League or are trying to stave off relegation. And I wouldn't have thought Everton would be in either of those two predicaments. I mean, that's slightly different to whether they actually have the PSR room to do so. But I have to be honest, I've not had an update on that. It's not something that I've necessarily chased. I mean, to me, it felt like the transfer window ended yesterday, the summer transfer window. So I'll take a little bit of a breather before we go back into the January transfer talk. I'm sure that'll happen soon enough anyway.
But, we're not far off.
I think they were obviously fine over the summer with PSR, or they thought they were fine, if we want to phrase it that particular way for now. And I think investments will come again. But I don't think they can go on kind of an unfettered spending spree. I still think they have to be mindful of what's taking place. I don't have a calculation in front of me that says they've got X amount available for January. Very, very, very few people would tell me that, even if I asked the question. But I'll see what I can find out before the January window.
Yeah. And finally, obviously looking ahead to January, just to finish off, I've got this question from Laura, who says, "Hi, question for Paddy here. Interesting that Laura doesn't want to know my views on this, so just you, Paddy.
I was just trying to wind up.
When is it acceptable to start Christmas? Thanks in advance." And you replied December the 1st. Do you want to explain your questions on that?
Yeah, the context here for you, Martin, for people who weren't listening, was that Laura, obviously a friend of the show, friend of the Blue Room, put up Christmas themed content on, I think it was either Twitter or Instagram. And she said something along the lines of, "It's never too early to start Christmas planning." And I think I responded saying, like, it's probably about 2 months early to start, or certainly 6 weeks early to start Christmas planning. I'm very much begin on December 1st. Start thinking about Christmas on December 1st, and like you still give yourself 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks to get the job done.
Get the job done like that. It's all like a proper Premier League manager there. There we go.
Take it game by game, week by week.
Yeah. Take the advent calendar window by window, chocolate by chocolate. Right, we'll wrap it up there this week on that note. Cheers to everybody who sent questions in. Sorry we didn't get to yours specifically. Tried to cover them all across the course of the ones we answered there. If you want to get involved with us and help us do some social stuff, do email at evertonbyline@gmail.com. Or if you've got any thoughts on anything else, Seamus coming back into the team, striker, PSR, when you start Christmas, it'd be great to hear from everybody on all those sorts of things by email or in the comments. If you watch on YouTube, do hit subscribe, do hit like. And yeah, if you want to get involved in the Bridewells event with Davey Weir, the details will be in the description or whatever you're watching or listening to this, or just get in touch with us and we'll pass on your details to the relevant people around tickets. So yeah, it should be a great afternoon. We'll be back again next Monday after Everton go to Manchester City. Yeah, due a win against them after, was it 9 years? 9 years since our last league win against City. So we are very much due a win there. So fingers crossed. Keno and the lads can tame Erling Haaland at the Etihad. But yeah, we'll get stuck into that next week. Cheers everybody for listening. Up the toffees. We'll catch you soon.